this is one of those instances where you will realize that the side quest, it is the main quest. And if you do not pay attention to this aspect of your life can be dramatically changed.
What if the side quest actually turned out to be the main quest? Our guest this week would say that's exactly the situation when it comes to the way we invest. We're continuing our side quest series as we explore how to thoughtfully spend our free time in life after graduation, and maybe investing doesn't sound much like a free time activity. In fact, it probably brings up passive images of automatic transfers, compounding interest, and future withdrawals. It's stuff that happens in the background on autopilot, not something that we actively engage with. And that's where our guest would politely but firmly disagree. Michael Lopez is an investment advisor and certified financial planner, an InterVarsity alumnus from Harvard. He also happens to be the guest on the most listened to episode in the history of After 4, and he's coming back to share why the time, attention, and resources that we devote to the quote-unquote side quest of investment has an impact that reaches all the way into eternity. And if that doesn't sound like main quest material, then I really don't know what does. So let's jump into it. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Hey there, John.
As I say welcome, this is one of those scenarios where I really should say welcome back. It's been a few years, but you are not a stranger to After 4.
No, that's true. I think it's been 4 years. So one college, length of time, from the last time that we spoke podcast wise. Although we also did connect a little bit, I think last January, so about a year ago or so.
Yes.
And yeah, it was definitely struck that you're a significantly taller in person than you are over the podcast.
It is hard to tell. It's hard to tell sometimes on this little screen. That's funny. Well, and Michael, I'm excited to have you back because as we mentioned in our recent 200th episode, you possess a very meaningful space in the After 4 catalogs, and that's that you actually have the number one most listened to episode wow. from back then, and it was a 2-part episode, and the second part is only a few steps behind it. So, I mean, both of your episodes are pretty high ranking in the history of After 4. So, I'm hopeful that we might break some new records together today.
I like it. Let's do it. We're talking gold and silver. Maybe we'll talk gold and silver today. I don't know. See how that goes.
Exactly. We'll see where it goes. Well, I have some idea of where our conversation is going to go, but I don't totally know. We'll see what happens. But Michael, you're joining us for a series that is that we're calling Side Quests. And anybody that's enjoyed any small amount of gaming or knows somebody who games is familiar with the idea of the side quest. You have sort of your main thing that you're doing, and then you sort of get pulled in all of these other directions for little adventures. And for me, those are oftentimes the most fun parts of a game, are the side quests. I just get lost in those things. And so we're thinking about, like, what are the things that we're spending our time doing? Maybe outside of some of the main ways that we spend our time. We spend a lot of time at work. What are we doing when we're not at work? Because sometimes that's the most fun part, is the stuff that we're doing when we're not at work. Now, if you love your job, as much as I do, and I'm sure you do, Michael, if our listeners love their job the way that we do, then that's awesome. But that may not be the case. So side quests, what do we do with our free time? And so we're talking about investments. How do we invest well in this season of life? And maybe that's not necessarily something that somebody thinks about for a side quest, but I think it fits nicely, especially knowing that with things like Robinhood and penny stocks and those kinds of things, investment is like more accessible than it's ever been. But I wonder if maybe we engage with it with a little less thought and care sometimes as a result of it being so easy to access. And so, yeah, I've invited the expert along to talk about investments, and I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you definitely frame this in this very interesting way. side quests, whether it's from games or movies or what have you. But yeah, how much of life is about side quests and about the turns and things that happen? And so yeah, absolutely, I would love to talk about investing. And we can spend the majority of the time on investing from a financial standpoint. But you also brought up something that was really interesting. You talked about time. You talked about free time. And I just want to put something out there that hopefully this isn't too controversial, but I completely disagree with this concept of free time. And perhaps it's just because I tend not to have very much of it these days, but I just have a number that I want to just throw out there for everyone. 168. Everybody has 168. What is that? Hours in a week. Everybody has 168 hours in a week. Now, what you do with those hours is up to you, but largely up to you. And there's some things you just can't not budget for. I would recommend including sleep in that 168 hours. But you're absolutely right. Whether work or studies or time with your family, eating, going to the gym, you have to fit that all within that 168 hour a week time budget. Think about it. So I really think about time and money as being two of three, what I call like life sources, life resources. So there's money, time, vitality. Vitality I define as like health or energy. And you may have different amounts of these resources in different quantities at different parts or stages of your life, particularly after you've just come out of college. You may realize, I have so much more free time in the evenings. That's what I felt like when I graduated college. A lot of free times in the evenings and my weekends, they belong to me. I don't have to study or write term papers or get ready for that final exam. But then you also then find out that, my 9 to 5 is not as open and freely structured. That's something that for many people is very, very structured. For me, in the investment space, 6:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., of course, California time, that's when the stock market is open. Monday to Fridays, except for certain holidays. And you want to do anything in the markets, it's got to be then. You can't, do things. And there's some after market hours trading and things, but by and large, so there are definitely constraints in their time. But one of the biggest ones is that you get a finite amount, no matter who you are. When it comes to monetary investing, that is absolutely in that side quests type of realm. Oftentimes we think like, what is our main quest? Well, our main quest kind of, changes and evolves over time. We go from high school into college. Our main quest is school. And then after graduation, unless you go to grad school, then your main quest changes. It's no longer, college. You've graduated. Well, now what? And then that changes to, then career, perhaps family, what have you. And a number of these things, you will have received instruction in various different forms in different places. But one of the places that we often do not get instruction is personal finance. It's very rare to have courses on that we attend for our degree, whatever that is. And so it's one of those things is like, this is kind of side questy. Maybe this is something that I should learn about whenever I have that elusive free time. Something that I will share, though, is that this is like one of those instances where you will realize that the side quest is the main quest. And you will discover that you can spend plenty of time in your career, working your salary, working your job, what have you, And if you do not pay attention to this aspect of your life can be dramatically changed based on the behaviors that you have. So all of this to be said, so I think just when it comes to basic financial principles, and then I want to talk about some more specific investing principles. Financial principles. I'm a certified financial planner. I've also in going through the certified Kingdom Advisor training. And one of the things that we just know for just basic building blocks, there's 5 things that we need to keep in mind. First one is you need to spend less than you earn. Another thing is that you want to build like a safety margin, build liquidity, just in case something comes along that you weren't expecting. Really wants to be very careful with debt, and as much as possible, he wants to limit or reduce debt, and that's a really big thing. It is very easy to spend other people's money, which is what that is. But why? Why is that? Well, it's because the people's money that you're spending, they know that you are their investment. They're going to be making money off of you. So do you want to be someone else's return, or do you want to get a return from your own investment? It's very, very key. And then fourth thing is setting long-term goals. You have so many different priorities of things that are just, priorities for your time, for your money, for your vitality, for your health, for that energy. They're all competing. So one of the things you have to, pay your rent, you have to pay your, utilities, gas for your car, or electricity for your car. But one thing I absolutely do encourage is you want to allocate some of your funds towards retirement. If you're working in a company that offers a retirement plan, 401k or a 403b, take advantage of it. Particularly if your employer has a matching program. That means that they put in dollars and you put in dollars. You have to do this. If that means that you have to see one fewer movie a month, or if you're going to change your Starbucks order with fewer add-ins or things, whatever it is that you got to do, you want to make sure that you do that. Now, why? Why is that important? Can I tell you just a real quick story?
Please. I love stories.
So I had a recent conversation with someone who is in retirement age, who works a job at just like a general government job, not like CEO level of anything, not super entrepreneurial, just a government job. And this person's been working this government job for about 3 years. It wasn't the first job, but a job, and is now getting set to retire. And this person contributed to a retirement plan early on, starting with something like $50 a paycheck, something kind of modest. And then over time, just increased it, $100 a paycheck or so, until he got to a place where this person was able to put in the maximum amount allowable per tax rules. And trust me, at some point, you're going to run into these limits. So over these 30 years, basically just put in these drips and drabs. Well, come to find out, looking at statement balance, this person has accumulated mid-7 figures in this retirement plan. Wait, what? Wow. This side quest of just putting in a little bit here and there, and like over time, over 30 years, has grown to 7 figures. And that's not 7 figures of contributions. This is 7 figures of contributions and growth. That is the power of what we call in our industry compounded returns over time. That's where your money makes money. And the money that has made money also makes money. And the money that made money is also making money. And it is the most powerful force that exists when it comes to the financial world. So, piece of advice when it comes to investing, start early. If you've just graduated college, start now. I don't care if it's $50 a month. When you retire, do you want to have millions of dollars in this side quest that is going to then, that could very well just completely transform your entire quest?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Michael, as you're sharing, I mean, it's just the things that you're sharing make it obvious that we're talking about this at the right time for people. That like, okay, this is, like you said, start early. So it is vital that we understand this early on. And because it is a lifelong pursuit, and being able to have sort of a view of the long game, it's worthwhile to start thinking that way now. Like, okay, early paychecks, first paychecks after graduation. Maybe even some of our seniors are listening in before they graduate. They've got a job. Like, even then, like, okay, what can you take to some of those dribs and drabs, put them away for long-term retirement planning and saving. And so it's vital for us to know this now. You've given us a few really helpful, like, okay, here's some starter ideas. And in particular, if your employer has a match, take advantage of that. That those are some helpful places to start, and that is all built on sort of a healthy. Okay, I have healthy day-to-day finances. I stick to my budget. I spend less than I make, and that makes it possible to do these things. I've got an emergency fund set aside, some liquidity just in case. And okay, this is great. We've got some fundamental pieces that we're building on here as we think about this moving forward for life. I mean, so then as you think about moving beyond, like when I think about something like a 401k or 403b, there is a certain amount of almost set it and forget it that can kind of happen with that. Like, okay, this is what I just put in money. They, Vanguard or whoever slides it into place, and boom, we're good to go. There are places that you have more control than just take my money and do good things with it. Help me retire later. Like, do you have any recommendations for this is what it looks like to be making mindful investments, choosing what to invest in? Like, what are some best practices for kind of taking the reins in wise ways, knowing, okay, professionals are going to do what they do professionally, and I want to let them do that well. But are there things that we should be doing as we consider whether it's those 401k, 403b, or maybe even some of the, I'd like to take money and I'd like to invest on my own in some other side places. Like, do you have recommendations for people doing some of those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, from, big picture to more specific picture.
Yeah.
When dealing with retirement plans that are employer sponsored, your options very well, most likely are going to be limited. They're going to be limited by what investments the retirement plan itself allows. There are also opportunities to save and invest for the future that are outside of retirement plans. You can have your own individual retirement accounts. Roth IRAs can be fantastic. Within Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, or individual brokerage accounts, you have significantly more leeway and choice in what you invest in. So you can invest in individual stocks. You can invest in various different mutual funds or exchange traded funds. When it comes to investing, there's some basic principles. Number one is diversify. You don't want to put everything into one company or one investment. You want to put it into multiple kinds of investments. If you work for a company that gives you the opportunity to invest in their own stock, there may be some people who are working in the tech stock space, and their company says, hey, we have this program where you can actually invest in our company stock, or we're going to give you stock options as a way to convince you to stick around longer, because you're real good at what you do and you make the company better. We've actually, I've had conversations with people who have had these stock options, and they started out in the company really small, and by the time the stock options, they were able to exercise them in really big numbers. So there's opportunities that you may have because of who you work for, but then you also outside that, we have opportunities just to say, I want to invest in these particular companies. But then, so that is general financial principles for the world. But what about us as believers? Yeah. What about us as Christians? Yes. Can we invest in anything? Well, is it possible? Yes, but should we? We ask those questions. And, is there room for us to apply our own ethics, our own morals in what we invest in? Do we feel good about investing in companies that profit from things that we have, moral objections for? And that in whatever your particular ethics or morals are, is personal. It's personal to you. It's whatever God has convicted you of personally. But, you may say, he's like, you know what? I do not want to profit from tobacco. That I personally view that tobacco is addictive and it is destructive for people's health. It robs people of their money because they can't quit. So I don't want to invest in tobacco. Or maybe you say, I don't want to invest in firearms. I just don't, believe in these things that can be used to cause harm. You may be someone who says, I absolutely have no problem with firearms. But I don't want to profit from, let's say, abortion or something. So if you have these personal convictions, but then when it comes to your investing, are you invested in those companies that are profiting from those things that you have more problem with? Yeah. So the good news is, yes, you can avoid those companies. You can screen for those companies. You can either do that by doing individual research into what those what companies that you're investing in do. If you want to diversify with mutual funds or exchange traded funds, there are a number, and there's a growing number of companies that will screen for ethical concerns. They'll have different criteria, and you can use the ones that screen for the criteria that you care about. But yes, there are a number. There's some that will screen for social concerns, some that will screen for faith-based concerns. There's a big growing movement in the faith-driven investor space. In fact, next week, I'm going to a conference, and a number of those money managers are going to be there. So we're really involved in the space, and you can do this. Awesome. But here is a big question many people ask. If I screen my investments for my ethical concerns, how much do I have to give up? Because if I'm not going to do as well as if I just invest in just a normal market index, that could be tough for me. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The answer is the costs or the difference in performance is zero. Wow. We have academic, rigorously proved evidence that shows you can ethically screen for a portfolio for concerns and still fully participate in the returns of the market. Now, that doesn't mean that every mutual fund is going to have the exact same returns as every other mutual fund. I mean, just in the overall space, that's not the case. But when you have a well-diversified portfolio that screens for ethical concerns, a well-diversified portfolio that is ambivalent towards ethical concerns, the returns over time are identical at a statistically significant level. So yes, it is possible. And as Christians, we know that what we do matters. And when we think about it, the work that we do, it's not our work. This is work that God's given us. The money that we earn, that's not ours. It belongs to God. Psalm 24:1, one of my favorite Bible verses, is the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And so God owns it all. And that's a very key concept to know, is that God owns it all. And so everything that we have, even the breath in our lungs, God owns it all. And God gives it to us freely so that we can then steward these assets, these materials, even steward our own breath. And it's not forever, though. We know that at some point, our lives here are going to come. I apologize. I definitely get just really worked about this. At some point, our lives are going to come to an end, and we are going to be faced with God, and then have to account for what it is that we've done. And we see a view of this. Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. The parable of the bags of gold, the parable of talents. Three servants that the master says, here, these are my bags of gold. You're in charge of those. I'm going to go away. I'm going to come back, and then we're going to see what you did with them. At no point do those bags of gold belong to those servants. It always belongs to the master. But he does have this accounting with them. And something that I do want to share, and this is very important, and this is very much an InterVarsity. We know with InterVarsity, when we do manuscript study, which, by the way, I love manuscript study. If you haven't checked manuscript.bible, you have to do this. If you are yearning for manuscript study from your college days, you can continue manuscript in perpetuity. So, little plug there. But the master says to the first servant that does a good job, he says, well done, good and faithful servant. And we hear this a lot. Well done, good and faithful servant. Those are the words that often we say, this is what we want to hear. And I want to tell everybody here that is not correct. Because it is incomplete. Because that's not the phrase. It's not well done, good and faithful servant, full stop. But it is well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I am now going to put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. It doesn't end with the good and faithful servant. This is just the beginning of something much bigger later on. What you do today, what you do now, in your jobs, in your lives, in your churches, this is preseason. This is the pregame to the actual game. This is the intro to the real quest. And that quest is waiting for us in eternity. And so with this, I just want to say one last thing here. And that is, I said that there were 5 things that we have to think about from a financial perspective. We went through 4. What's the 5th? The 5th one is, we think about investing in our profession in three time frames: short term, medium term, long term. Short term, things you're going to need right now. You want that in cash. Medium term, things you're saving up for a big purchase, a house, a car, something. And then long term retirement. But there's a 4th term. And that 4th term, I call the eternity term. How do we invest for eternity? And as you may know from before, I am not a fan of the term giving, because giving to your church, because I think that is it's not what we actually do, because we're not giving to God's work. We are investing in God's work. We're investing for eternity.
Yeah.
However, I've kind of been on a bit of this crusade for a while to say it's like, no, don't give, invest, don't give, invest. But give is still out there. So instead of saying, like, don't give, I'm going to say, do give. But you have to know what give means. And give, it's not a word, it's an acronym. And that acronym is God's investing vision for eternity.
Wow.
How do you like that? God's investing vision for eternity. You, as a believer, know that this life isn't it, that there is more coming. Jesus talks about this. He says, in the Sermon on the Mount, do not put your treasure on earth and things where rust will destroy and vermin will destroy and thieves will break and steal. Instead, invest in heavenly treasure where rust and vermin will not destroy and thieves will not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Invest in eternity. Now, great, excellent. How do I invest in eternity? You invest in eternity by investing in the work that God is doing now. Invest in your church. Invest in Christian nonprofits that are doing great work. Invest in short-term mission projects. Invest in places where, just like you're going to invest in companies, you want to know that you're investing in a company that is going to perform well. Do the same thing with your investing for eternity. What are places that you know that are faithful, that are following what God has in store for us all? And I am going to say one of the places that I invest is InterVarsity. Why? Because my experience as a freshman, that InterVarsity sought me out. InterVarsity was intentional. InterVarsity taught me how to study the Bible. Again, manuscript all Bibles. Go get it. InterVarsity taught me how to think differently. And I know that InterVarsity does great work. And what does InterVarsity do? What does InterVarsity produce? InterVarsity produces something that no other group can say that they do. InterVarsity produces InterVarsity alumni. You, as alumni, are in a unique position to do the work that God has given. So, InterVarsity I have invested in InterVarsity, and that investment has turned out you, the alumni. And I am super pleased with those results, and I encourage you to do the same. Invest in InterVarsity, and you also will get the return of future InterVarsity alumni.
Oh wow, Michael, I love this vision. I mean, God's investing vision for eternity. God's investment vision for eternity. I mean, that blows my mind. As we've been thinking about investments and what does it look like to steward well the financial resources that we have, and it's so easy, not totally wrong to think this way, but it is easy to think of that just in the realm of, okay, how can I be wise with what God has given me so that I can keep, feeding myself and my family and having a place to live for the duration of my life. Like those are good things to be thinking about. You would be foolish to not be asking questions like that. But you're helping us broaden our thought of this side quest of giving this is part of the quest. This is part of the main thing. And how are we contributing to the investment vision that God has for eternity? And that looks like investing in these kinds of things. And so I'm so grateful for you broadening our perspective on what investment looks like, that this isn't just short, medium, or long term, that this is the eternity term as well that we need to be thinking about. You and I are products of people thinking about that. Our alumni who are listening in right now are products of people who were thinking that way. Yeah. And it's still our turn, but it's also these young alumni in first year of life after graduation to be thinking about, okay, who is going to be the product of the investment that I make now moving forward. And it's exciting to be invited into that level of a vision together. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you helping us do that and to remind us of those things today. If you have any final words of encouragement that you would give to our alumni in this new special season of life that they're in.
Absolutely. And that is, I just want to just reiterate, just remember, the side quest is the main quest. What you do, the community that you're involved in, the friends that you meet, the relationships that you develop, are going to be far more impactful in your experience than anything else. Like jobs, careers, houses, cars, vacations, all these things, great things. And God loves to just lavish, blessings upon his children. The biggest blessing that God wants to lavish upon you is relationships with one another, and most importantly, relationship with him. He loves being in a relationship with you. So, so just that is that, these things that may seem inconsequential, that may seem detours or wrong turns or things like that. This is all part of the what God has put before you.
God's investing vision for eternity. Give. This investment stuff is way bigger than just a side quest after graduation, alumni. It's a guiding principle for the rest of your life. What value and potential for eternal value do we see in our time, our resources, and energy? And what are we doing to lay a strong foundation for the future? Yes, for our own personal financial future, we want to be wise stewards of the resources that God has provided for our own flourishing. But just as important, what are we doing to invest in the future of God's kingdom? What are we doing with the bags of gold that the Master has given us so that when he returns, we can tell him, see, I put your resources to good work and look at the return that I got for you. If you aren't already, I hope you will seriously consider where and how the Lord is inviting you to invest in eternity. And if I can make one recommendation, if you aren't already, please consider investing it in the InterVarsity chapter that you are a part of as a student. Michael, thank you so much for joining us again. Here's to breaking new download records together. Alumni, be sure to come back next week for our conversation about exploring hobbies as a free time side quest after graduation and how to do it with purpose. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it. I will see you in the after, alum. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.